Okay, so this week it was hugely exciting for me because, I mean, for months now here on DF Direct Weekly, we've been kind of speculating about the future of Windows on ARM. This week, the Microsoft Copilot laptops launched, various models. We weren't sampled with one, but I put in a pre-order for the Surface laptop, and you can kind of see it in the background there. Very, very beautiful machine, very, very light. I'm not going to say silent. It's got a tiny little fan in there, but even running at full pelt, it's very, very quiet. Lovely OLED screen. Looks like a really high quality device, as you would expect from a Surface, right? But we need to talk about the gaming, because that's kind of been something that's been touched upon in the run-up to launch, but nothing really definitive. We do know that it has Auto SR, which we've discussed in the past, which is like a kind of system-level AI-based upscaler. But beyond that, there's been sort of not much. Talk of Baldur's Gate running at 1080p 30, not much more. So yes, I didn't actually start work on the Surface laptop until, well, basically yesterday, because I'm currently working on the Asus ROG Ally, which you can see in the background there. So
I can't believe, I still can't get over that, Rich, that we officially learned it was ROG.
Yeah,
it feels like I've been betrayed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what can I say? But yeah, basically I set up the Surface yesterday because I wanted to quickly offer some first impressions for this direct, right? Install setup, basically just like a normal PC, despite the fact it's running on an ARM processor, as you'd expect. And to begin with, everything seemed fine. I installed Steam, I installed some games, and then I loaded a game. And that game was Crysis 3 Remastered. You press play on Steam, and then, you get the little stop icon that appears on Steam when you start a game. But then it just switched back to play, and basically nothing happened. So yeah, Crysis 3 Remastered doesn't work.
So your fancy new laptop, Rich, cannot play Crysis 3, your favorite game.
How many pounds is this laptop?
2,000. I paid £2,000. The reason I put the £2,000 down is because Microsoft offers a 60-day return window, and let's just say that I will be making use of it before we move on. So, next order of business. Well, whenever you look at one of my handheld reviews, I always cover Forza Horizon 5. It's a great game. Looks awesome on. It runs great on all mobile processors. Again, press the button on Steam, the play button, and then nothing happens. Just goes. You get the stop button, and it goes back to play. It's another game that just doesn't work. And starting to get a bit worried at this point. Does it play games at all? Control is one that was also mooted for compatibility. So, I gave that a go, and it does work. I've got some footage of it here. This is running at 768p connected to a capture card, but it should be offering 1080p as an option. But weirdly, for some reason, it doesn't. Let's put that aside for now. 768p low settings. Alex, you pointed out this morning it's kind of similar to Xbox One.
It is.
It does run similar. Mostly at 60 frames per second to begin with, few sort of blips and oddness. It does look as though Auto SR is active on there, but I haven't done any on-off comparisons. One thing I will note is that Auto SR does seem to have a destructive impact on HUD elements. I think they basically warned us about that in their blog. But yeah, basically runs pretty well to begin with. But when you get into the trouble spots in Control, the Corridor of Doom and the fight directly after that, basically you get some pretty bad stuttering, and it doesn't feel great. Other games I tried, I mean, at this point I was just really quite disappointed that, I bought a PC that doesn't run PC games. And we can laugh about it, but the point is, the whole point of a PC is compatibility, right? And I recognize it's running on an ARM processor, but when Apple did it, I think they did a much better job of straddling the divide between x86 and ARM, and things generally worked. Here, it seems to be entirely random as to whether a game will work or not. But so, yeah, I went to look for a list of compatible games so I wouldn't be wasting my time any further. Next game I tested was God of War. This one's quite interesting. I was running this time. It did actually recognize that I was connected at 1080p. However, the performance wasn't great in the mid-20s, so I actually changed the resolution scale to 75%. I think it's 810p. And basically, performance is sort of 30-ish or under, which isn't great, but there's some awful stutter going on here. It's not great. I'm just looking back at the footage now, and it looks pretty awful. What can I say? A massive frame time spike there I'm looking at. My God. It's just really not good. I would not consider it playable. Next game I looked at was Dark Souls 3, which, shouldn't be too difficult. It's not exactly a highly challenging game. So yeah, you can see from the footage here, frame rate analysis, that it's basically, this is, I think 768p. It's not great. It's basically sort of mid-30s, occasional 20s, very, very rarely, going up into the 50s. But again, egregious stutter here. It's just not great at all. So it's not looking good for the Surface laptop, is it? It's really unimpressive. However, final test here, because Alex demanded this one. And I agreed that it would be a great test to do. Obviously, there was discussion prior to the launch that Baldur's Gate 3 was running at 1080p 30 or thereabouts. And, well, you know what we're going to be doing. We're going to be going straight to Act 3, the Baldur's Gate city, and having a look to see what's going on there. Now, this one's really important because obviously it's CPU heavy on x86. So what's going to happen on ARM when presumably weaker CPU cores are also having to go through that Prism layer, that sort of translation layer? And the answer is, well, first of all, I tried at 720p, low settings, basically bare bones stuff to make sure we're CPU limited, but that would of course pare back the CPU utilization as well. But even so, not bad. It's sort of running in 30 FPS upwards, really, which I was kind of surprised by. A few dips beneath. It does still seem to be some stutter. It's not hardly a fantastic outlook overall. But the point is that it's doing much better than we expected, right, Alex?
Yeah. In this case here, and this with all your other tests, it's really hard. Qualcomm, we're not just looking at a CPU here. We're also looking at a GPU architecture that has a lot of unknowns, and probably the drivers, if we've seen anything from the Intel situation, let's be honest, the drivers are probably awful. And this is their first outing, and Intel had incredible trouble, and Qualcomm definitely will too. The GPU supports a lot of stuff, though, interestingly. But in this case, when you look at this test, which seems much better, but then you go to something like DX11, you showed Dark Souls and you also showed God of War. Most likely it's hard in such a case without any internal tools to know what is happening, to know if this is an issue with the CPU translation layer from Prism, or if it's actually their GPU driver being unable to deal with certain things that happened under DX11 that are very simple for maybe NVIDIA to solve or AMD, but for a new driver manufacturer where the games weren't even made for their GPU architecture, who even knows? So I'm also like John, I'm actually kind of really disappointed in the day zero experience based upon what you just showed here, because I would have expected Microsoft, the people who make DirectX and the people who essentially champion x86 as part of the PC platform, to do better with a day zero, especially for something so expensive. And, you buy a PC and you expect it to work. And this is obviously not that experience at all. So, yeah, but I think in the future, what I would like to see is a little bit more openness regarding how much you can profile this thing, because it would be good to know if a game's running poorly because the GPU is the problem, and the driver, or if it's because of Prism, and we just don't have that info yet, right?
Yeah, you're quite right. If you run Reaver Tuner, it just crashes the game on start, any game.
Sick.
Going back to Baldur's Gate, though, a bit of a happy ending here, so to speak. Basically, after doing 720p low, I mean, the game looks hideous. There's no doubt about it. I didn't want to play it like that, so I kept it 720p resolution. But weirdly enough, you do the auto detect settings and it suggests ultra, which I'm not sure is correct, but I did try it. And suddenly, obviously, the game looks a whole lot better. Still at 720p, obviously. But the weird thing is that now, bearing in mind Baldur's Gate, the city is super CPU heavy. The frame rate here is surprisingly okay, bearing in mind what's actually happening with an ARM CPU core here going through a translation layer. We're seeing sort of performance between 20, slightly under 20 to 30 FPS, mostly in the sort of low to mid 20s, I would say, looking at the footage here. But even so, bearing in mind the amount of CPU workload that's happening there, and bearing in mind that the consoles, specifically Xbox, is not actually that much better running natively on x86, this is quite impressive, I'd say.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd say this is the best test so far.
Yeah.
But it's also like still not an ideal way to play the game.
No, obviously not.
For a $2,000 laptop.
Absolutely.
My goodness.
It's just an academic observation, really.
Yeah.
And just to sort of, to sort of, how could I say it, temper expectations. This is under a DX11. If you select Vulkan, the game just crashes. There's just so many issues here, Alex, and you're quite right. You'd expect better from Microsoft. And
dude, it's blowing me away, like how bad this turned out so far, right? First of all, obviously, we've seen this kind of transition before to like either a different architecture or a completely different OS layer. Apple did it before many years ago when they shifted to Apple Silicon. And then Valve, although still x86, they had to contend with the Linux layer, right? And both of those products on day one handled that reasonably well. They were clear as to what you could run. You didn't have the same types of issues that we're seeing here. And given that it's much later now, I feel like, and it's, it's Windows, you kind of expect better, because after that, it's like, what else is the purpose of this laptop then?
Yeah.
And then there's also, like, beyond this being half-baked at launch, there's the whole recall disaster.
Yes. Jesus.
Right? Like the whole product line just feels like I like what they're doing. I like what they're heading towards, but it's half baked. And I think this is the stumble that Microsoft's had in the hardware business in general, between all the Surface stuff, the phone stuff. Every time they get into this, there's really cool ideas here. There's things that you're like, this could work really well, but then it launches and it feels incomplete. And I feel like you can't take away those first impressions. People remember that stuff.
Yeah.
And that ultimately hurts the product. And this just feels like it wasn't ready yet.
Yeah. I mean, what can I say? I think the whole point of I said this earlier, the whole point of a PC is you buy a new PC and you know your stuff's going to work on it. Now, obviously,
it's a PC.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we know that this is a different kind of PC, but this is like the founding principle of what a PC is: compatibility. Obviously, I'm testing this out of what you might consider the prime purpose of the device. But even so, if it's not running all of this stuff, what about other non-gaming applications? I'm going to be really interested to see how the reviews all pan out. Interesting to note, of course, that based on what I'm seeing online, specifically Tom Warren at The Verge, review samples for the Surface laptop didn't go out until launch day, which, what can I say? That's always a bit of a red flag, isn't it? Review samples don't go out. I mean, obviously they're ready because, we received them on day one. I mean, the laptop arrived very early on the 18th, which was the launch date. The hardware was ready. I just don't think they wanted it to be reviewed before launch. I think there was some small reviews on an Asus laptop. I don't know, but there was very, very little coverage. And yeah, you're quite right, Alex. The recall situation was just that's just basically, what can I say about that? it's an interesting feature, but the way it was implemented was just so bad that to the point where they've had to basically withdraw it and re-architect it to make it more
That's
secure.
the thing, right? If it was just that, I could see still launching, but it sounds like the first experience you're having here is also not very good, which makes me think the whole product line should have been delayed, and they basically come out and have to represent it to the public, so to speak. Like
Right.
this was the moment where they should not have launched when they did. I'm sure there was a lot riding on it, and shifting a product launch is really, really, really difficult, no doubt. But this is not a good way to kick this off. And it makes me think, like, again, ARM for Windows may be doomed. We'll see.
Well, it's not a great start, that's for sure.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to dig more into it. I do want to check out the Auto SR, but yeah, I can't say I'm massively impressed with what I've seen of it so far, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Rich, I have a very important question for you. It's a historical question. What offered a better day one experience? This Snapdragon X Elite processor in games at launch, or the S3 Verge in 1996?
I didn't have an S3 Verge, so I can't answer that.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, John?
I did not. I just knew about it because it was on the 3D decelerator. I would say that the S3 Verge at least was regarded as a pretty decent 2D accelerator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe this is the same. You can play all those sweet Flash games on your 2,000-pound laptop.
I think that's funny you say that, but yeah, 3D cards were like up and coming, brand new hot technology, and nobody knew what to do with it, right? 3D effects came along and blew everybody up, but like the ARM space, like this kind of stuff has already it's
existed for as long as x86, right?
It's around. It's been around for a long time, but it's become increasingly popular in the recent years, and we're seeing a lot of stuff move towards this. And I feel like Microsoft coming in this late, and then, I mean, they've done it before, but coming in, this is like their second shot at it. I think there was
third,
the Windows.
Right?
Was this their third shot at it?
Let me think.
Oh my god!
There's Windows on ARM, and then there's also Microsoft, sorry, Google Town. But it's definitely number 1 or 2 or 3.
It's definitely an early. What CPU was used in those pocket PCs back in the day that ran like Windows CE? I wonder.
Oh, I can't recall. Man, that's going.
They could have used an ARM processor in there.
It may be one of the OG Celerons that was low clocked? I can't remember.
I can't remember, but that just made me think like, wait, is Windows CE?
I think in summary, I'm really interested to see what the actual
Windows
issue
CE
is.
does run on ARM.
It does?
Really?
Well, look at that. See, this is number 3 then.
Okay.
Good job.
Yeah.
I'm
just really curious as to where, what's causing the problem here. Is it the GPU driver? It just can't cope with so many games. Is it the translation layer that's causing problems? I don't know. I do think that we will see at some point an NVIDIA ARM-based SoC, if the rumors are to be believed. There's some sort of MediaTek collaboration going on there. You would expect NVIDIA to get the drivers right.
Oh, yeah.
Same with AMD. I'm sure they're going to be looking at this as well. And we'll go from there. But certainly, based on what I've seen so far, I mean, just the fact that I've bought a PC and I can't load up games basically means that, it's a bit of a non-starter from a gaming perspective. I'll try out these AI features, which there seems to be, the whole point of the exercise, seemingly. But, what can I say? The new AMD APUs have AI accelerators in there, which are compatible. So, and Alex, you were telling me about Notebook Check review for the Surface laptop, saying that the battery life wasn't actually that great compared to Windows laptops.
It wasn't within like the realm where it made the deficiencies like you talked regarding software or even the noise. The one they had was a cheaper one using the slowest end of the processor. And they were saying like the noise where they thought it would be like the thermal situation would be better. Essentially, but that could have just been their laptop for that review. It was a lower end one. But yeah, there's a lot of reviews coming out for these things, and there's going to be a bunch over the time. And I think we should, like you're saying, we should do a more dedicated look at certain aspects of what's going on here as much as possible, because it is a future at this moment. I hope Microsoft doesn't doom it because I want to see it keep going. But not a good start.